And I'll start it again like this. With Assad's regime's gone, there is many issues to talk about today. We're going to continue talking about specifically about some of the recent news about Netanyahu and the leader of the HTS, the biggest rebel group, and some of the, let's say, not necessarily words they themselves exchange, but sort of like exchange through the news. And joining me today is James Valliant. I'm from a bit different location. Let me know in the chat if the audio, both for me and James, is sounding okay. It's gonna be a bit worse, but hopefully it's not too bad and it's still palatable. There's a word for that. Palatable, I think. So I mean, James, we with this new, I mean, probably a new upcoming leader. I have his name right here. So the leader of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, as it's usually referred to, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, real name Ahmed al-Shara. He actually did change his name at some point. But he said something along the lines of Syria is not ready for another war, sort of referring to, I mean, in some way, there is no Syria right now. There is, it's sort of like a bunch of groups, but there is a sort of a transition period or a basically transition state that Syria is going through. But they are saying, or he's saying that Syria is not ready for another war. Our enemies, specifically quoting him, our enemies are Iranian militias, Hezbollah, and the regime which caused massacres we are seeing today, referring to Assad's regime. So, I titled this episode, Syrian rebels don't want to fight Israel yet, because the way it was worded, and while we'll talk about on the reality show more about these specific groups, but I mean, James, what do you think from this statement? Syria is not ready for another war. I mean, me and you were on an episode on Monday talking about how Israel took parts of Syria, so sort of saying that saying we're not ready for another war when Israel is sort of like taking parts of your country is like an interesting statement. I mean, James, what do you think?
Well, more than that, the Israelis have engaged in more than 300 airstrikes within Syria in recent days. They've, from what I understand, they've basically destroyed the old Syrian Navy, or pretty much taking it down. The United States has done things there as well. So one could expect that the people there will be taking action to reduce the weaponry, and some of those weapons are just horrible, and they've been used against the Syrian population themselves, like chemical weapons. But more than that, the weapons that bad guys might have to take control. What's heartening about his statement is that he says they're not friendly with Hezbollah and Iran. We do not want another war. We want all parties to be part of this new government. They're saying good stuff right now. I understand also that a good deal of the ships in the Russian port have also left for their own protection. That will be a critical issue, is the presence of Russia as well. But at least they're saying the right things. At least they know that the bad guys, the guys that Assad was with, the guys that they, part of the government they were taking down, the allies of the government they were taking down, Iran and Hezbollah, are not our friends. And yeah, I would think that after 13, 14 years of brutal civil war, really 15 years of horrific violence in Syria, they're weary. They're weary of murder and oppression and death and civil war at this point, and for good reason. And if obviously the only correct approach would be to set up a government that respected individual rights, at least to some extent. And this would require that all religious and ethnic groups be treated equally under law. That would require a kind of liberal approach to government. That is something I am not sanguine about. I do not think that the culture would be amenable to that. On the other hand, they're saying all the right things right now. these people, the rebel group that appears to be dominant and in control of Damascus right now, the leader does have roots, in rather hardcore Islam. And connections, at least earlier in his life, with terrorist groups. In fact, the group that's taken over in Damascus has been designated a terrorist group. Now, if they want peace with the West, though, if they really do want peace in general, they will establish a government that does recognize the individual rights of all Syrian people. But that may be a bit of a dream on my part. I have no basis, in other words, to say, well, yeah, a government much more friendly to the West, a government where all ethnic minorities enjoy rights, is going to happen in Syria. I'll believe it when I see it. But at least they're saying that the right bad guys are the bad guys. Hezbollah and Iran, those are the worst actors in this region, correct? And they're saying they're sick of war and violence. That's good. Do you really want peace with Israel? Israel is going to take steps for its own self-defense as it is right now. And hopefully what's gone on, what Israel especially, but Israel and the United States have done, have reduced the weapons and the weaponry in that area so that at least there's a chance for something sane and peaceful to emerge there. But if I were a betting man, I wouldn't say the odds were for it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I think I mentioned it to you, but I'm not sure. But someone accused me of spreading Russian propaganda by being sort of not necessarily critical of the HTS, but sort of not really believing that this terrorist organization. I mean, that's what they are. It is still a U.S. designated terrorist organization, and until that changes, we should look at it as such. It came out of Al Qaeda. It so sort of seeing this new face, and to their credit, this is not something that happened in like last month or just last 2 days. It has been something that sort of they were trying to do for years. I think since I mean even the fact that they sort of went away from Al Qaeda and then later even tried to sort of be reformed, try to sort of look better during the offensive. They were, let's say, more friendly, sort of not just raiding every single village they went through or something like that. So as I said, I love to see anything we can get. And I'm not sure if you've seen this meme, but there's this meme going around like what is the one book that changed your life? And there's a picture of the leader of HTS, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, and the picture the book there is Why Nations Fail. And it's like, the guy read the book, he changed his life, and now he knows like what to do. He knows exactly how to, because I don't know if you've read the book, but at least from my understanding of the way it is sort of talked about in the book about how to sort of not have a nation fail, he is sort of following those guidelines, like respecting minorities, sort of trying to build strong institutions. I don't know how strong institutions were during the Assad regime, but I think even the fact that this is not like a revolution, it is viewed as sort of like we are just like transitioning. We just want to slowly like take over the institutions, but not not have like a bloodshed or something like that. Seemingly that's sort of show a nicer face, and I'll bring the other side of there's a couple of things I want to talk, and also Netanyahu sort of I mean, on one hand, reaching out, sort of friendly hand, at least sort of seemingly saying, we are willing to maybe be at peace with the Syrian people, be at peace with the new Syrian government. But I think what I really like is both strongly, while saying that, also taking actions necessary to protect Israel, which I think taking small parts of the Syrian mountains is important to that effect, and as well as I think bombing valid targets in Syria, and also saying that we are willing to sort of be at peace with Syrians, but if Hezbollah continues to have presence in Syria, or if Iran continues to have presence in Syria, or if Iran manages to support Hezbollah through Syria or anything like that, Israel will strike.
Yeah. Netanyahu, I think, said it very well. He doesn't want to interfere and determine the course of Syria's own future. They have a right to set up their own government, he says. On the other hand, we have our own security interests. And so you've seen over 300 strikes within Syria, which are designed, of course, to protect Israel's security. They have every right to do so. And wanting saying, look, we'd be happy to be allies with Syria is the correct approach, no question about it. And the guy who's leading the forces, the dominant forces that now control Damascus, is an interesting guy. I mean, yeah, of course, he was trained in Wahhabism. He has his Al-Qaeda type roots. He's also he has a degree in electrical engineering, I understand. And knows English and has exposure to other ideas. So I don't know. And I don't know what the last few years have done to him or his group. It seems they've gotten the lesson about Hezbollah and Iran. They are not your friends. That is not the way to set up a stable state. If you want to have peace, you're going to have to recognize the interests of all of the people in the area, including the Kurds, including all the different groups of refugees that have fled the country and might want to come back. That is the only way to set up a stable government. If they want to be friendly with the world and interact and have a better future than the Assad regime. Now, it's not just the latest Assad, it was his father. I mean, this goes back decades, almost as long as I've been alive. There's been an Assad dictator of Syria, and it has not been a pretty picture for the Syrian people. It has been brutal, savage, impoverishment, warfare, chemical warfare, murder of political dissidents, the flight of God knows how many people from that country over the last decade into other countries. So let us hope for the future of Syria that something stable, something rational, something more liberal, something more Western facing comes about. And the only way you're going to create a stable state, sir, is to have a liberal, pluralist type government that recognizes individual rights and gives equal protection of the laws to all parties, whether they're Kurds, Christians, Sunni, Shia, Druze, you name it. They all have to be recognized. But that would require, in effect, the ideology of liberalism, the ideology of America's founding fathers or something, to have at least a foothold, a toehold in Syria. And I'm not sure it's there. It could be that all that we're hearing from them is for international consumption right now. Now, Blinken, I understand, is on his way. Our foreign secretary is on his way to Aqaba in Jordan. He's on his way to Ankara in Turkey, two very, very interested parties that will probably have a big influence on whatever happens there. It's unfortunate that Turkey has gone the way it has. I don't trust Turkey, frankly, or the king of Jordan as far as I could throw them. But on the other hand, that's, I suppose, a step better than Hezbollah and Iran.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, one thing I really like about Middle East is that when I want to refer to the head of state, I can just say King Abdullah, and I'm like 50% chance I'm gonna be right when it comes to the head of state, which is King Abdullah. I think it's the second is the current king of Jordan. I'm mostly kidding, of course. But when it comes to sort of this new, and on the reality show, we'll talk more about these specific groups going on in Syria. When it comes to HTS specifically, I think if they really take the sort of rebuilding the nation seriously in the sort of, I don't like to use the word multicultural, but sort of, let's say, minority respecting or sort of a place for all. I mean, if you could compare it sort of like what Lebanon used to be, well, one question is really if you can really hold it for a long time without a proper philosophy. But I think Syrians would even take the 60 years of Lebanon and however long it sort of held on to being sort of a successful state. I think they would take that over it. But one thing I think they need to really account for is the fact that the Turkey supported militias have been attacking the Kurds even since the Assad regime has fallen. Not to mention, of course, beforehand, but even now that you could say the fight is over, the civil war is over, the skirmishes, the clashes continue, and I don't think you can sort of claim, unless you want to make Syria sort of separate from the Turkish the Turkey militia controlled territories and the Kurdish led territories, and just, well, that's not us. We are just here in Syria. We're different. If you are calling for a united Syria, I think the HTS, especially if it wants to be sort of more closely to the West, I think they have to do something about the I think the official name for them is the Syrian National Forces, which is really weird name for the forces that were against Assad to call them national forces. But that's what they call the sort of the Turkey supported militias, and we've seen some. I believe I think during the offensive, the Turkey supported militias were kicked out of one of the town because they were not acting nice. Um, and they and sort of you've had few things like that. But if we really want to see sort of like a united Syria or Syria that might look forward to the future, something has to be done about Turkey, and it's really
Yes.
It's really scary the fact that we have like a NATO country, basically two sort of entities, not necessarily countries, but two sort of entities. They are both supported by NATO members, sort of fighting against each other. Of course, the Kurds supported by America, as well as having American bases there, and of course, the Syrian National Army Forces being supported by Turkey.
Well, that's it. And that's going to be the subject, has to be the main focus of Secretary Blinken's trip to resolve the skirmishes. I understand that there was a agreement for a ceasefire, but I understand, as you say, skirmishes between the Turkish supported groups and the Kurds have continued. And so something has got to be done along those lines. I mean, it is true. America supports the Kurds and their safety, and the Turks have been definitely supporting the more dominant group in the area, no question about it. And so, what are the odds? I mean, it's the Turks must see this as a great opportunity to increase their influence over the area. But if they're going to continue to be oppressive, then I'm afraid Turkey should have long been booted from NATO. They do not really, in my view, serve NATO or the West's interests anymore. They've moved in a very, very negative direction. And this is one of the really hot spots where you can really see that clash between the negative direction Turkey has taken and, let me put it this way, civilization. But yeah, if the Turks are going to come in and support a government that's going to oppress the Kurds, and if that's what they call Syrian nationalism, then we haven't changed matters much. Now, if Syria wants to be really open to the West and have a chance for, a decent country, maybe they should take a page from I don't mean to sound like a nationalist myself, but take a page from my own country's Declaration of Independence. Through the founding fathers of my country, they held it to be self-evident that, and it's hardly self-evident, as you can see today in the Middle East. I think it's a dramatic demonstration of how not self-evident the proposition is. But they said they hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights. Now, if the forces in Damascus recognize that, there is a chance for peace, stability, trade with the West. The world can open up to you, Syria. Your people can have a decent life, not the hell it's been living through for the last 14 years. Um, uh, but that's the only way. It really is. If you want continued civil war, oh yeah, then let those Turkish masters who've been supporting you urge you on in their interest in degrading the security of the Kurds. The Turks are enemies of the Kurds, and they're enemies of Syrian peace insofar as they would help a government that would be just as sectarian as any other in the region.
Let me read a few super chats. So we have a super chat from Paul. Thank you so much. He says, Daniel, don't bring back the headphones. I don't know why people have a problem with my headphones, but since so many people are saying it,
You
I'll
have such
try
a
to figure
sharp haircut
something
now.
out.
You're really looking suave there, my brother. So keep
Thank
the
you.
headphones off so we can see your cool haircut.
I'll try to think of it. I'm currently traveling, that's why the setup, I have to come up with something better. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, great discussion, and Daniel looking smooth. Thank you so much again. It's really not that complicated. You just shave the sides, you let the top grow out, and then you use like this like molding styling clay. You just put it there, and it works. And it's only like $5, so it's pretty cheap. And it keeps for like days. Until you
It's
wash it.
cement, man. It's cement.
Uh, we also have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. Um, And yeah, I think we've mostly covered what I wanted to. We are still waiting to see what the HTS will do, how they will move from here. What I'm it's sort of important to remember that the reason why Israel is controlling Golan Heights is because Syria in the past has attacked Israel. So at least in the past, there were enemies of Israel, and in some ways are still a threat to Israel. So it's really on them to show that they really, want peace. The people that want peace. I mean, you could have the HTS sort of being those sort of enlightened technocrats, sort of like knowing what's the best for the people. But if you don't have the support of the people, if let's say HTS says we do not want war with Israel, or we do not want enemy relations with Israel, if the people don't want it, then it doesn't matter unless you're going to become a dictator. But then we are back to Assad days, and that wouldn't really move them much more in the better direction.
No, no. At least from this
Uh,
perspective, Syria is safer for Israel. The fall of Assad's regime has allowed some activity that has made Israel, I think, and the region generally safer. But should the new control of Syria actually break their word and once again become a supply chain for Iran to get weapons into the area to attack Israel, then of course we haven't changed the situation much at all. But let's hope, and that's all we can do. I don't know. There's a huge number of unknowns here that we're facing. And is it just talk when they say they're against Hezbollah and Iran, or are they serious about it? He comes perhaps with the right context after, what has it been now, more than 10 years of civil war, a real ugly civil war. But as I indicate, I mean, as brutal as a civil war can be. And that's what when you see people going into these prisons and trying to find records of their loved ones who disappeared under the Assad dictatorship, you really get an idea of how lots and lots. I mean, there's practically no one in Syria who's been untouched and unaffected by the Assad dictatorship. Now, if the lessons sink, but events don't tell people how to react to them. It's ideas that do. It's philosophy that shapes how people react to a crisis and how they respond to violence. But ladies and gentlemen, in Syria, it was not Israel that was causing your problem. It was not. It was a dictatorship hell bent on being an agent of the Iranians and the Russians. And if you can stop that, then there's a chance for your people to have peace, prosperity, and a chance for a decent life. But I, I don't know that my words will have any impact on a single person in Syria, unfortunately.
Well, you never know. I keep have to look up his name. Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. Maybe he watches ARCUK. Maybe he on October 7th he started watching and he's like, oh, these guys are onto something. Maybe I need to be a bit nicer to minorities. And maybe it's a long-term dream to see something better in the Middle East. But
and how they
it's
deal with the
all.
Kurds will be critical. That's the critical test, because truly there's been violence between those groups for a long, long time. And if they can make some kind of peaceful settlement and arrangement with Kurds and a government in Damascus that respects Kurdish rights, then there's a chance for a peaceful, united Syria. But if not, then we're in for more hell.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that what we hope for the best for Syrians and for Syria and for every for every rational person in the Middle East, for every innocent person in the Middle East that is fighting against the regime or is trying to not participate to the best way it can. It is important to remember that the goal of our governments, meaning Israel, America, or any Western nations, is to first and foremost protect our rights, protect our lives. And if Israel needs to strike into Syria because Iran or Hezbollah or anyone else poses threat from Syria to Israel, then that needs to happen, and that's simply the way it has to be. But we'll talk more about the specific groups in Syria on the reality show. James, any last thoughts?
No, let's, keep our fingers crossed. There's a lot of unknowns in this, as you say, and let's hope for the best in terms of. It sickens me to negotiate with Turkey, but obviously the United States and Turkey have to come to some agreement about the Kurds, or there's really no hope in Syria, as I say. In any case, let's hope for the best. It's a chance, I guess is all I can say.
Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the reality show in just about a minute or so. Thank you, and bye-bye.